Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of The Savvy Luminary. And today is all about our Mercury retrograde that we are already in, our first one for 2021. Before we dive in, one thing I wanted to say is that this little podcast, The Savvy Luminary, is approaching a huge milestone, our very first solar return. It's been almost a year since we began. So if you love this show and it's helped you in your business in any way, please consider leaving a rating review on Apple Podcasts because it really helps bring this show the visibility and pushes it up the charts so that I can help connect with more spiritual entrepreneurs like you. Also, if you're feeling extra, consider sharing this show on your Instagram or social media and tag me at New Moon Creative Co. That's where I spend most of my time on Instagram. Again, that's New Moon Creative Co. Aloha! Welcome to the Savvy Luminary, an astrology podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, an Aquarius boss woman, a brand designer, and business astrologer. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers just like you reach your highest potential and become the luminaries you are star charted to be. Okay, so we have another information-packed episode. And oh my goodness, I hope I'm not overwhelming you with information. I want to get you this information not to overwhelm so that you can really feel empowered by using this wonderful Mercury retrograde time. Now, I know if you've been following the internet memes and everything about Mercury retrograde, yes, Mercury retrograde is in the zeitgeist, which is awesome. But more often than not, it's, internet memes are kind of freaking you out about Mercury retrograde, all the miscommunications and technology glitches and all these things. And yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at this cycle from that perspective, of course you're going to, have those frustrations. But if you really know how to work with this energy, it is a potent time for rethinking, reflection, reorganizing, redoing, reconnecting. And of course, in our future forward-facing sign of Aquarius, we get to really rethink our role in our business when it equates to social change, equitable success, and how you are going to be a change maker. Because of course, if you are a spiritual entrepreneur, you are here to make this world a better place. So doesn't that sound exciting when you're thinking about Mercury retrograde? So today's episode is going to be a replay of a masterclass that I held on Friday the 29th, January 29th, just as Mercury was stationing. So, I know that I'm crazy and decided to hold a workshop on that day, but you know what? I did it. And if you want to get the entire replay, because we're just taking excerpts, there's not enough time to go through everything. But if you want to get the entire replay of the masterclass and the worksheet that has these really epic reflection questions about how to assess your role that you want to play in your business, head over to my website, thesavvyluminary.com/Mercury, and you can get the replay and the worksheet for a reduced cost. Oh my gosh, I'm super excited about that. So in today's episode, of course, I'm going to have an excerpt of the replay of the masterclass where we'll be talking about what this Mercury retrograde is, the meaning of this retrograde cycle in Aquarius with all of the crazy Aquarius energy that's piling up this February, how to work with this energy in your business so that you can rethink equitable success and connecting with others over shared values. We don't have time for a user question today, but I do have time for the astrology for the week. So here you go. Enjoy. And remember, you can get your replay, the full replay and the worksheet for a low cost at thesavvyluminary.com/Mercury. Oh, and before I forget, of course, we have to have a mantra for today. So our mantra for today's episode, so we can center our energy. If you'd like to ground your feet, I invite you to ground your feet. I invite you to imagine yourself pulling all of your scattered energy and bringing it straight into your soul. Sit up with a straight back, straight spine as much as you can, and take a deep, clearing breath. Now repeat after me. I am an agent of change, and my business impacts others through shared social values. I know that's a big one, so let's put that in again. Let's embody that again. Bring it all in. I am an agent of change, and my business impacts others through shared social values. All right, let's get into Mercury retrograde. So any curiosities? Who here is kind of like freaked out? Like you can't see me raising my hand because I don't have my video on. But who here is a little bit freaked out about Mercury retrogrades and kind of like, oh gosh. Yes, Rita, to dive deeper into astrology. I think that if you're here, you're on the same boat with me in terms of like, hey, this is an opportunity, right? Jen says, excited to reframe Mercury retrogrades. Exactly. Reframing this idea of this shouldn't be anything to fear. And, taking it from this lesson that I was like, oh, I'm still going to host a masterclass on the day that Mercury stations is a lesson that I obviously didn't listen to my own medicine about like, well, tech glitches we can have a lot of tech glitches, and as long as we can embrace and be patient with tech glitches, then onward, right? Jen, seeing the opportunities and the possibilities in April, it feels like a really important and powerful time in business. Yes, to set up the year with new perspective using Mercury retrogrades. Not to be bothered, but keen to explore more about Mercury retrograde and navigate these energies. And so there's quite a handful of you here, if you don't already know, that you actually have natal Mercury retrogrades. I know Rita, and I know that Robin, you already knew that you were born with this energy. And April, I don't know if you knew that you were also born with this energy. So in reality, if you have a natal Mercury retrograde, this feels like you're just coming back home, right? This feels like, oh, why do people get so freaked out about Mercury retrograde? Because this is awesome. Let's go swimming. Like the water is perfect. Exactly, right? We don't often know. So I'm so glad that we're bringing all these things up because, we are officially in Aquarius season and we had our full moon yesterday. And it is by design that we had our full moon in Leo because it was illuminated by the Aquarian energy about the future and what prevents us from like diving into that future. So today I hope to provide and shed some real insight as to how we can really use this energy in our business and, getting a little bit of a higher forward thinking perspective with rethinking radical change and creating equitable success through our businesses, right? Because we're all spiritual entrepreneurs. We're all here to change the world. And you can kind of already see it. Like, wasn't it who followed like the news and just saw like the wild ride of all of the stock markets going up and down because of the people, right? With the GameStop and people just coming together and affecting change so that there's not all of this like focus and of power and access just with a select few, but it's really more for the people. And your business has a part to do with bringing in this new future. So for today, as part of my contribution to social equity and shared social success, 10% of today's proceeds of everybody that paid, thank you so much, is being donated to Outdoor Afro, and they are an organization in Oakland, California, creating environmental and social change through Black leadership. So, today we already kind of talked about these things about you don't have to freak out, and that this idea of Mercury retrograde cycles are just this wonderful time where we get to hit pause 3 times a year so that we can rethink and reorganize and reflect and re-say the things that are really important. Because this Mercury retrograde is going backwards through Aquarius, and there are so many energies piling up in Aquarius in February, this is going to allow us a deep, deep dive into all things Aquarius. So that individuality that Robin was talking about, social causes, change, innovation, our friend networks, like in our personal lives, but then in our business lives, this really is about our fan base. And if you're really taking a deep dive into Aquarius, the 11th house represents revenue made from our business, right? That comes from our larger groups. And so, yes, this is really important energy for us to really rethink on and to act on this change, right? And, I, again, am not following my own medicine about, going with the flow of this retrograde energy. Like I was the numbnut that scheduled this workshop on the day that retrograde Mercury stations. And obviously, like I can't even find my words right now. I'm just kind of laughing at myself. But when we know how to work with this energy, then we're not stuck in this place of like, oh, should I sign that contract? Should I not sign that contract? Should I launch this? Should I not launch that? Because if we're understanding the Mercury retrograde about getting to redo, reorganize, and rethink, like, yeah, if you have a contract that's been just kind of sitting on the table for 3 months and you wanted to sign it and you want to revisit that, then yeah, that energy didn't initiate during the Mercury retrograde. That initiation started way back 3 months ago. Things like reaching out, like if you had this conversation that didn't get finished, this is a good time to reconnect with that person. Or if you have like a product that you want to relaunch, like this is not the first time you're launching a product. Like if you have an ongoing membership and you want to open up a relaunch or a recart, then this is like amazing time when you understand like this is about looking into our future and connecting over shared social values. Does anybody know kind of like the how Mercury retrogrades happen, like just from like an astronomical perspective? Basically, Mercury only takes 88 days to travel around the sun. So it's zipping around, right? So for our 1 year, like for Earth's 1 year, like Mercury will have 3 years. And because it's going back, it's zipping around the sun so quickly, it's basically lapping us. Right. So every time it laps us, it's at its closest part to the earth. So that's why we feel it so intimately. Mercury is one of our personal planets, like Mercury and Venus and Mars. Those are all planets that are before I think it's the Kuiper belt, it's called in the solar system. And so in astrology, we consider this our personal planets. And that's why we feel the effects of Mercury and our Mars and our Venus so intimately, right? We might not feel Jupiter things. We feel Pluto things. Let me not go digress there. But we feel Pluto, we feel Saturn, but like Mercury zips around so quickly. And if you look at astrologically, Mercury is thought of as our device, our communications device to our solar consciousness. It's never more than 30 degrees away from where the sun is. So Mercury will always be within one zodiac sign from your sun, and that goes for everybody. Right. And so, as it's moving fast and as it's in its retrograde cycle, Mercury is at its closest point to the earth. And then that's where we feel that tug, right? Because even if you're talking to astrology to skeptics, we can all agree that we are affected by the seasons, by the sun, by the moon, all of those seasons. And even the planets have their seasons with us. Now, in astrology, because Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, right? When we think about a Mercury retrograde, when Mercury is going direct, it goes to Gemini, which is our logic and our thought process and like the way that we talk and the way we chat, the way we communicate, right? And then we understand things logically, and then when we understand things logically, we move it into our body. We move it into our hands, and then we start to do the things that we think about, right? That we start to act on what we think about. Now, when Mercury goes backwards, and this is something for those of you that have Mercury retrograde, the process is actually backwards, that you have to embody the information, and like your hands have to do it, your mouth has to chew on it, your toes have to wiggle on it. Like you notice those people that have to they have to tap or they have to move their bodies in order to understand things. You can almost always look at their chart and notice that they have Mercury retrograde because they're processing the information in their body before they're able to understand that. And so that's even just really helpful to know, right? Like how empowering is that to know that, oh, if I have Mercury retrograde, no wonder I'm always walking back and forth when I'm trying to figure out something. Like Mercury is closest to the earth when it's going retrograde. And in fact, it spends almost 20% of its time in retrograde fashion. So we'll talk about that cycle of Mercury and the sun, because it's really important in not just our natal charts, but just in the seasons, right? Of course, Mercury isn't actually going backwards. No planets stop in their orbit to go backwards. It's just from our tiny little perspective here on our blue marble that we call Earth. And in 2021, our Mercury retrogrades all happen in air signs. So in 2020, you might have noticed that your emotions were running high because during the Mercury retrogrades in 2020, it happened all in water signs. Right. That last one that we had in November had this extended Scorpio season. But when you reflect back on that Mercury retrograde going through Scorpio, like how wonderful was it to have that Mercury in Scorpio extension? Because that is us connecting with our intuition, right? And I mean, who here has really, their intuition has really lit up since 2020? Right. Like I feel for me, I just feel that 2020, that extended Mercury retrograde, Mercury stayed in Scorpio for so long that we really got to rethink how we use our intuition in our lives and in our business. And so Mercury will also have an extended time in air signs this year. So starting off with Aquarius, the most outward reaching, right? The three air signs that we're going to get to experience this year are Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. All of those retrograde cycles. All of those air signs, yeah, we know them as like mind and intellect and logic. We know them as those kinds of signs where we are those elements where we're thinking about things. But more than that is that air signs love to socialize. These thoughts are used for creating shared connections. And so when you're socializing on an Aquarius aspect with your larger networks and your friends, you're connecting over shared values. Right. And so this is really important to know in your business about like, hey, how are we calling in the people that we're supposed to work with? It's over our shared values. And if you haven't really thought about what your values are, and I know that has changed a lot, especially in 2020, where we were asked to take us down on our values, right? We're getting clear. And now we're going to do a deep dive on rethinking on what those values are so we can make those values known and really call in the people that we want to work with. Right? So today we are going to really talk about how we are going to use this energy to receive and express our energy. Right? We get so inundated with all of this news, fake news, social media, all of these things. So sometimes it's really nice to just hit pause. Right. Like, oh my gosh, we don't give ourselves enough time to pause. And in this pause, in general, Mercury retrogrades are great for redoing, reorganizing, reflecting, rewriting, rethinking. And it is a gift. And I know that you all see this as a gift. So let's talk about what this means now in Aquarius, right? So I have this little Venn diagram. And if you're going to listen to the replay later and you're not seeing the visuals, I'll have this up on social media and also on social media. You can follow me there. But we're thinking this time about rethinking equitable success, right? We mentioned that Mercury retrogrades are time to reflect and reorganize. Mercury is about communications, understanding, logic, and then Aquarius, our future forward social power. And so when we get to redo all of these things, you get to reimagine what we want our future to be. Because if we don't reimagine and vision what our future is, then we have no way to direct our lives to get there. right? Like I'm curious to know who here is like really certain on what they want in like their 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan. For most of us, including me, like I can see my year ahead and I can have some big dreams of like 5 years. But even these exercises that I create for you are mostly I'm creating them for myself as well. So April's like, nope. Michelle is nope. Great. So, and then when we take this time to pause, then we really realize what we want. And then when we really realize what we want and what our social values are, this allows us to really create those channels to reconnect with our people. So, all about branding here. I know sometimes that I get really far away from the root of what I want to do is about branding and how do we connect and show up for our people. So, just a little bit thinking into our brand. So, this is a little resource here for everybody about what Mercury represents. So, of course, we're thinking in our brands, in our lives about thinking, communicating. It really also represents technology and short distance travel, although nobody's traveling right now. It also is about the people in our community, like our closest community. And it's also about teaching. Now, Gemini and Sagittarius are kind of the teaching archetypes. I mean, like everybody has the ability to teach. But when we think about Mercury and Gemini in teaching, it's more about teaching the basics. Okay. So these are like kind of basic thinkings, not like big philosophical thinkings. But then Aquarius brings us into the future because it's an air sign about knowledge. It's fixed because it knows what it wants. It loves to share ideas. It loves to think about the future. It loves social change and it loves being a humanitarian. It loves surrounding itself with friends, although they're not the most attached friends. Okay. Like if anybody here who has a lot of Aquarian energy, they're like, yeah, I love people in general, but like, ooh, once things start to get like too deep, maybe I'm not the best person for this. That is so me, actually, if you know me a little bit. And then, of course, Aquarius is the archetype for revolutionary change making activism. To get really specific with our Mercury in retrograde, today we are going to be looking in and diving in, maybe not answering, probably not answering about realizing your privileges, because we all have them. We're going to be reiterating what our social values are, because we're going to take a deep dive into that. So we're going to be reimagining our business as a role model, and we're going to be rewriting our brand values so we can reconnect with our change-making co-creators so that we can reignite our larger circles and communities. Like the astrology of February supports all of this, okay? So don't feel bad if these things feel really big and just like you can't really grasp everything about it right now, but do trust that over the next few weeks, as you plant these questions into your mind and into your soul, that these answers will come to you. All right. The astrology of Mercury retrograde, for those of you that are like really astro curious, this is the chart of the halfway point of Mercury retrograde. And so at Mercury retrograde, at the halfway point, it's called a combust. Okay, so you can see Mercury, the symbol for Mercury right here at 20 degrees Aquarius and 1 minute in retrograde. And the sun is also 20 degrees and 1 minute. And so the combust between Mercury and the sun feels like it's a full moon, like everything is fully illuminated. So if you have a chance, clear your calendar on February 8th, because February 8th energy is going to be pretty similar like to today's energy. So if you already have like a workshop or a webinar, consider putting that on pause and rescheduling. So Michelle asks, is only this Mercury retrograde good for reimagining? I think it's always a wonderful time to reimagine, but really with this energy of the cosmos that we get to use right now, it's like very supportive for this reimagining of the future, right? Like, like I know that your chart, Michelle, is always very future forward. Like you want to take initiative. So like that's kind of your baseline, right? And then Catherine says, I don't have any Aquarius in my chart, although it's directly across from my rising sign. Yeah, so Catherine, your 7th house cusp is Aquarius. And so, even if we don't have any planets by Aquarius, we definitely have it by cusp, by doorway. right? And so Aquarius at the seventh house for is like really this place of where you project, and it's also this place of where you love to collaborate with your committed customers, right? But then, so know that Aquarius is going to be highlighting between 26 degrees. It's at 26 degrees today, and it's going to go all the way back to 11 degrees of Aquarius, and then it's going to move forward again. And so during this time, we're going to have all of these energies: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, all in Aquarius. And the moon will be more closer to the new moon on February 11th. So you can see all of these pileups of energy. Now, the chart that I have here is just a general chart. This is just cast from San Francisco at that time of combust. But oh my gosh. So if you have a lot of fixed energies, like this is going to feel awesome for you. If you have a lot of cardinal energies, not so much, right? Just in general. Okay. So what I have here is the schedule for Mercury retrograde. So Mercury retrograde comes in several phases, and you can really think of it like thinking about the cycle between the moon. We're so familiar with moon cycles, right? I already mentioned that the halfway point of a Mercury retrograde is similar to a full moon schedule, a full moon feeling, but we have our pre-shadow that has already started. Okay. And so this started back in January of 2015, and it's really asking us, what are you currently noticing that needs reconsideration? Right. So over the last few weeks, I'm wondering if anything has come up in everybody's minds about like, oh, what am I here to rethink? Like, like maybe doubts that have come into your head or anything like that. Has anybody had any kind of realizations like that?
I feel like I've been rethinking everything.
Yes.
I feel like I'm even rethinking, like, do I even want to stick with wellness, or do I want to make it something else? So I've been feeling that, especially the last few days. It's been, yeah.
Yeah. Even last night I had all of these rethinkings, and then sometimes the rethinkings come in this form of doubt, right? Like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing?
Yes. What am I doing with my life?
Right. Catherine says she's been rethinking a lot about process and systems and technology as well as her offers. And Rita, darkness, throwing it all out. Get any other job. Oh my gosh, we'll have to look at that, Rita. And April, rethinking my business and structure and home location. Yeah, these are really big things to get to rethink about. Now, I especially also like if you haven't already done your goals for 2021, if you haven't like set your, like if you do resolutions, after this Mercury retrograde, you're going to be so much clearer. So don't worry if things are really unclear and murky right now. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay. We're not supposed to have clarity because everything is out on the table right now that we get to rethink. We don't have to make a decision. We just get to think about it. Now, there is a fine line between thinking and overthinking. So if you find yourself getting into those spirals, go get some fresh air. Okay. Take a nice clearing breath. Today is the 29th, and then we have our station retrograde. So if we have any planets on or near Aquarius of 26 degrees, we're feeling this intensely. And for me, I have both my sun and my Jupiter at Aquarius 25 degrees. So yes, this is intense for me. I'm feeling kind of my intensity sometimes when I start to feel too emotional, I get hyper. And so I feel like I'm in that kind of hyper state. So you can probably hear it in the way that I'm talking right now. That's how my intensity is like kind of expressing itself right now. After today, when Mercury actually now appears to go backwards over the next 2 weeks or actually just a week, because the Mercury, when it goes backwards, it's actually going backwards for 3 weeks total, but the whole phase takes about 6 weeks because we're in the shadow zones before and after. And shadow zones just means that it's retracing the areas where it's going backwards. And so over the next week, I want you to get curious about what new information is coming to you that needs to be reconsidered. Okay. Again, there's nothing that you need to do. just notice, right? And then we have that combust, the full moon phase of of Sun and Mercury at that halfway point. And so, if like just yesterday's full moon, like for me, I really need to create space and have like places in my schedule that are unscheduled so that I can do the things that come up, that I get inspired, all those downloads. So leave space for those downloads, because you probably will have an overload of great inspiration that comes to you, especially if you've been already planting these questions that we're going to review today. So after the 8th, after February 8th, and the last week of the retrograde phase, this is where now you're going to have some clarity, where you're going to start to reorganize and kind of make a plan with what you're going to do with all your new learnings. And then on February 19th, Mercury will come to a stop again right before it goes forward. And so this is going to be another intense time, a feeling very much like today, right before Mercury changes gears. You are going to finally feel like, okay, now I can act on some of these things that I've rethought. And then once Mercury starts to go direct on the 20th in just a few weeks, then things will start to flow again. You'll feel like things can move, unless you have natal Mercury retrograde, and you'll be like, I'm out of my I'm out of my natal energies. And then we have the shadow. Okay. So February 21st through March 12th, you're still moving forward, but you're still trying to figure out, you're still trying to catch up on things, but resisting rushing. This is not yet time to rush. And then once in March 13th, once Mercury gets through the shadow, meaning it leaves that place where it was highlighting, it moves past Aquarius 26 degrees, then things are full speed ahead. I suspect that if you have been trying to make a plan for 2021, it's going to come out sometime around February 20th and February 21st, where you're going to be like, okay, this is what I got. So, Catherine, I know you're rethinking your offerings. I think somewhere around February 20th, February 21st, you'd be like, woohoo, I finally have my ideas. So we already started talking about these things, and I just want to replant them in. And I want to know, how many of us here know our social values and are already using them in our brand, in your business? I think with social values, it's about taking a stand and calling in our people. It's not to be divisive, but it is about being polarizing, right? Because we want to know that we are serving people that are on the same page as us, right? And so really understanding your social values and taking a stand on it through your business, you're going to find that you might lose people, right? But the people that you lose, if they don't have your shared social values, they will be a pleasure to lose, right? So today, what I would like us to do, when we're going to look at our privileges, we're going to get understanding about what our social values are, and we're going to reflect on what we want the future to be. We're in that future, we're going to imagine ourselves as a role model in that future so that we can rewrite our brand values that fit this version of our futures. And as we kind of redo and rethink and rewrite our brand values, this is going to allow us to reconnect with your change making co creators and then really call in your larger circles and communities. Okay, so I want you to really look at your chart to get an understanding of where you are meant to rethink in your business in terms of where is Mercury retrograding, highlighting by house in your chart. Of course, if you've been following me on social media, I'm passing forth a ton of information on my social media posts. So be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm sharing all these ways that you can customize your Mercury retrograde. But right now, I want to focus on the house. So which house is being highlighted by this Aquarius Mercury retrograde? You're going to be looking at Aquarius of 11 degrees to 26 degrees. And the house that is activated in your natal chart is the part of your business that needs rethinking this cycle. So, if you have your retrograde happening mostly in your first house, I want you to be rethinking your role as a change making leader and how you share that power with others. If you have Mercury traveling through your second house for most of this retrograde cycle, you want to reevaluate your social values, how they add value to your business, and how you share that value with others. If your Mercury retrograde is mostly happening in the third house, you are here to rethink so that you can refine and communicate your radical message to promote your business as an agent of change. If you have a fourth house activation during this retrograde cycle, you are here to recreate your safe communities of diverse beings to create innovative inclusion in your business. If you have Mercury going retrograde in your fifth house, reignite future forward creative enterprises and causes that set your business and brand apart. If you have Mercury retrograde happening in your sixth house, reorganize your innovative ideas of service through your business as being part of a greater whole. If you have seventh house activation, rethink your collaborative partnerships in your business with other change makers, bringing in the future over a shared cause. If your Mercury retrograde is happening in the eighth house, reflect on healing the past as a necessary part of healing the future in and through your business. If you have Mercury retrograde happening in your ninth house, reimagine sharing your innovative vision of the future as a contribution to the wider world. If you have Mercury retrograde activating your 10th house this cycle, recommit to delivering your breakthrough innovation as a platform to creating equitable success. If you have Mercury traveling through the 11th house for this retrograde cycle, you are here to reactivate your greater social networks of change makers through humanitarian values and activism. And of course, if you have Mercury traveling through your 12th house, reveal what innovative reformations are needed to restore truth and in and through your business. All right. So if you need this repeated again, I'll have this on social media, my house by house activations, and be sure to check in your natal chart where 11 degrees and between 11 degrees and 26 degrees of Aquarius falls in your chart to reveal what house is being activated where you need to rethink in your business. I'll be returning to my user question of the week next week. So if you have a question about your business, leave a short voice message with your name, birth time, date, and place, and I will choose a listener question to answer during the next episode. Head over to speakpipe.com/The Savvy Luminary. Or if you forget that, you can always go to thesavvyluminary.com and you'll find a link there. Okie dokie, let's get into the astrology of the week for January 31st into February 6th. 2021. If you're already on my email list, you'll be getting your full February forecast. And, I know I'm asking you to do too many things this episode, but, my Gemini rising can't help it. There's all these things to do. If you need a forecast, head over to my site, thesavvyluminary.com, and sign up for my newsletter. Then you will get a written report of the entire month at the very beginning of February. Astrology of the week. So on February 1st, Venus enters Aquarius, where we get to connect through social values. Shared social values. What social values connect you to your communities through your business? So for a few weeks, be on the lookout to meet the right change makers or innovative resources to help your business, right? Venus is joining already Jupiter and Saturn and the Sun and Mercury already in Aquarius. So we are, once the new moon phase comes in and the moon joins in, wow, we have a pile up. It's called an assembly in Aquarius. So As Venus zips through and enters Aquarius for just a flash until February 25th, for these few weeks, we get to really look at what we desire in relationships and resources. All of these things get updated and awakened and maybe out of the ordinary. Venus is our magnet to people and resources. And while in Aquarius, Venus wants to connect over shared values with friends and other change makers. Venus also represents what we value. So while zipping through Aquarius, your values may be future facing and value and really focusing on the value of change, social equity, and all things technology. I'm super excited with all of this Aquarian energy. So as Venus zips through Aquarius, yep, she will be activating Jupiter and Saturn already there, sharing her blessings. So if you have any energies in Aquarius for these few weeks, how you will feel like this nice glow as Venus touches your natal energies as she passes by. Also, on that day, on the 1st, we have Sun square Mars. Stand by your convictions and lead confidently. What motivates you to take a stand in your networks and society? Are your motivations being tested? For a day or two before and after, you will feel confidence to stand up and take lead for what you know to be true. Sun and Mars square off in the fixed energies of Aquarius and Taurus, causing creative tensions that require integration. Thank goodness we have Venus adding her grace. Otherwise, this square could feel quite inflamed because with this energy, integration is required. Resisting change will only make things more tense. So be on the lookout for where you need to take a stand or perhaps where you need to create momentum for your stance. This would be a really good time because we're still in Mercury retrograde to, rehash that conversation, that difficult conversation in which you might have been avoiding. I'm kind of saying that for myself. On the 4th, we have our 4th quarter moon in Scorpio. And 4th quarter moons are about resting and releasing. And in Scorpio, it's asking, what can you detoxify from your life and business that will let you restore? So if you need to peace out, this is a great day to peace out and really rethink of the toxic people and situations in your business that you need to let go of. You've earned transformative alone time to process all that has happened in the last few intense weeks. Quite frankly, you're probably feeling quite angry with the events of the world at this time and witnessing people's true colors. Take a break. Go inward and decide what needs to go. The last quarter moon phase, as you know, is a time in our lives and our businesses where we need to cultivate all that we have learned and assess what we want to continue with and what we want to churn back into the earth as nourishment for the seeds we've planted. With this Scorpio 4th quarter moons, spend some time integrating and releasing so you can let go with all that you don't need. Time to go deep, Scorpio, within to access your inner truths. Again, Scorpio. All right. And then on the 5th, February 5th, we have Venus meeting Saturn in a conjunction at 5 degrees Aquarius. And when Venus touches Saturn, value has limits. So remember, Venus represents value, resources, our connection to others, our relationships. So you can put that in place. So all of those things have limits, have responsibility, have commitment when it's next to Saturn. So the question is, who or whom do you need to commit and how can you connect more with less? It's definitely a day to kick in the wheels because you have to test your values and your relationships today. This may show up with people, your values, or your money. Venus is your ability to attract and connect, but with combined with Saturn, things feel like there are clear boundaries or limits. You don't need to please everyone. You get to say no to spending more or when being asked to reduce your rates. You get to tell customers that you love them, but what they're doing is not okay. You may also need to tighten the belt somehow to spend less, do less, commit to less. Feel into how this is showing up for you. And if you know your chart and you can read it well, look to where Aquarius of 5 degrees falls in your chart. The house that contains the 5 degrees of Aquarius tells you where in your life and business where you need to focus your values, tighten the belt, and commit to your committed partners. On the 6th, Venus squares Uranus, an up-leveling awakening of resources and values. What privileges can you share for social and environmental impact? During this day, you get insight on your values and how you add value, but today you could face some surprises. This shakeup is meant to awaken you to all that you have and to your privileges so you can live in this Aquarian ideal of shared resources as value. Something needs to change in our society. And what can you give to bring about this change? Not only for your business, but for also social and environmental impact. It is time to be part of this restorative, regenerative, reawakening change. That's the astrology for the week. Again, if you already are signed up on my newsletter, you'll get the February forecast. If you want something extra, we still have our 2021 in the stars available. It's a calendar and an ICS calendar that you can plug into your phone to get these updates with you whenever you need it on demand. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed all of that information about Mercury retrograde and that you don't feel overwhelmed. Instead, you feel really inspired by this time of year that we get to have 3 times where we get to reset and repause and redefine. How exciting is that? So thank you again for making time for joining with me. Let's close out this episode with our beginning mantra. If you can just take a beautiful clearing breath again and sit up straight with your spine, just connect your feet to the earth and your crown chakra to the sky. Repeat after me. I am an agent of change, and my business impacts others through shared social values. All right, so go out and get them, everybody. You are a change maker, and we are here to bring in the future. Mahalo for listening to this brand new podcast. If you enjoyed learning about astrology for entrepreneurs, help me spread the word by sharing this podcast with your business besties, and hop over to the Savvy Luminary for links to episode notes and our free Facebook community where you can send me questions about astrology or branding, as well as connect with other like-minded businesses.